Thanks for tuning in to the Prime Bookseller Podcast, the bi-weekly podcast discussing all things Amazon bookselling.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Prime Bookselling. I'm Eric. We're back with another episode, and today we're going to be tackling what is the newest. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's one of the big problems that Amazon has really been pushing to make their systems better and things like that, which just you'll find out, all these things that they do to make their systems run better always affect you as a seller greatly. So basically, what we're talking about in this episode is something called product restrictions. And product restrictions basically mean that there are certain items on Amazon that you as a seller have to either apply to get approved for to sell. There are some items on Amazon you simply cannot sell. There are different requirements to get approved to sell items. Some items, particularly in the book category, I'm finding right now that most sellers that start as a new bookseller, they can't sell any books. They're basically restricted in every book. But as you start listing books, generally the process to get approved is automatic. So basically you just go to Amazon and say, hey, I want to sell this item. And Amazon says, okay, you're good, you can sell this. Or they make you answer a couple questions in a questionnaire about counterfeiting. And once you answer those questions correctly, they say, okay, you're approved to sell in this category. In many ways, these simply are things that are just making our lives a bigger pain in the butt. But they are something you have to deal with. And this is also something that I don't, over the past few years, I mean, I would say 7 years ago, maybe these didn't even exist. And now, over the past 7 years, they've just become more prevalent and more prevalent and more prevalent. And you see them more often on Amazon. So this is not something that's going to go away. This is something you just have to learn to deal with. Again, this is another one of those things that from my perspective, there's not a whole lot you can do to protect yourself or to be ready for this. You just got to kind of deal with the crap they throw at you at all times. So what can we do with product restrictions? The number one thing you want to do is just realize that they're there, understand why you're being restricted. And there's two sides of everything. Like I've said many, many times on this podcast, that I'm a lazy seller. And so I tend to take the easy route on this. And the easy route is to not let these things bother you, not let them bring you down, and just deal with it. You get a restricted item, you just kind of I just usually throw it away, call it a day, and say, you know what? It's probably better I don't sell it because it's restricted for a reason. So, but then there's the complete flip opposite seller that is very diligent about this and must get approved in everything to sell. So you'll see sellers that I literally are applying to be able to sell things that they don't even sell just because they want to be approved and they want their account to have that approval if it ever comes to it. So obviously, like anything in life, there's different gamuts to this. I'm going to tell you that if you're starting out, especially in the books selling world, which was what we're primarily focused on, this is something you're going to have to do because, like I said, I think most newer accounts now are simply restricted on everything. And don't get freaked out by that because 98% of the books that you want to sell, you'll be able to sell. You just have to apply and get approved. And you have to do this basically when your account starts out. You have to do this with every item. And it gets better over time because what you're applying for is you're not applying to sell that particular item. You're applying to sell every book from that book publisher. While this is going to be an ongoing process for a while because there are a lot of book publishers, you're going to find very quickly as you do this process and you go in and you get approved for these, that over time it's just going to become less and less. And so it is something you have to deal with. And I mean, if you were thinking about starting as a fresh new bookseller today, you're certainly going to have to deal with it. And you're just going to have to come up with a system for how to do it. Personally, in my business, we have two I have two clients that basically are affected by this, seem to be affected by this. And all we simply do is we upload everything that we want to list to his account, to either of their accounts. The system will bounce back. It'll give you an error and say you're restricted in all these items. We take that list, we go to that person's Amazon account, and we just go through each SKU one by one and apply for it. And once you apply for it, you'll see that the next time you go and process it through, it'll just go through just fine. So basically, all this is doing, at least from a bookseller's perspective, is just making your job harder. And personally, I believe that Amazon is simply doing this because they are trying to restrict the amount of booksellers. They're trying to make it less appealing to be a bookseller because they think they have way too many booksellers right now, which one could argue they probably do. So, but this is something that's easily, from the bookseller's perspective, it's easy to get over. Not a hard thing. It's basically trying to tether you. It's trying to make your job harder. But now beyond that, beyond just that initial approval for all the books that you want to sell, there's also going to always be books that are just simply restricted. And a lot of these books that you can go into, they're going to ask you for invoices to get you approved. They might ask for some of them, they won't even ask you for anything. Some of them, they'll just say, we're not accepting applications at this time. So just realize that this is something that's going to affect your business all the time. I can tell you a couple things. As we've played around with ideas to try and mitigate this a little bit. And what we did is we kept track of all the books that we were restricted in. We made an Excel spreadsheet of those books. And whenever I placed orders, I just made sure we didn't order any of those books to try and keep these restricted books down. My personal opinion, I don't employ that anymore because I felt like by doing a system like that, Amazon's systems are chaotic. And it just seemed like if I just keep building this list, eventually every book will be on it, because at some point in time, for whatever reason, Amazon is going to decide, hey, today this book is restricted. That is probably all completely psychologically in my head, but that is how it always felt. But you can try to mitigate this as best as you possibly can. I have found it's just simpler to just deal with it because it's a small enough percentage of books that you just simply flat out cannot apply or cannot sell, that it's just a little bit of lost revenue with it. And you can always, a lot of these books that are restricted that you might get in, depending on how much you're paying for it. Like, there's a lot of times where I can turn around and I can go to like a website called bookscouter.com. And what that does is that has a whole directory of companies that are willing to just make you a flat cash offer on the books. And there's a lot of times when you go and you take that restricted book, stick it into there, and they're not going to be restricted to sell it on Amazon, or they're not selling on Amazon, which some of the companies on that are not really in the Amazon game. But a lot of times they'll make cash offers for those books that will be greater than what you actually bought it for in many instances. That is certainly not all the time, and more books you're going to lose money on that way, but it's a way to recover a little bit of money from those restricted books. Overall, because this podcast is focused on book selling, I feel like product restrictions are hitting a lot of other sellers a lot harder than booksellers. Fortunately for us, I mean, other than this recent thing that they did where now every book is restricted and you have to apply and get auto approved for all of them, other than that, there has not been a lot of publishers that have really, really gone at this and really, really tried to hamper Amazon down to just take all of their books off of the marketplace thing, which you should be thankful for. That's one of the appeals to being an Amazon bookseller, is that in a lot of instances, people that care about book selling, the publishers of books and things like that, they've already gone and had their spat with Amazon. Whereas a lot of manufacturers of other products now are just starting to get on board with, let's go fight with Amazon because they're selling too much of our product. And they have too much power in the market. So So a lot of these fights have already been fought on the bookseller side. So a lot of these big changes that Amazon make doesn't affect a bookseller nearly as much. We will probably talk about changes that have made, because there have been some massive changes that have been made in the last years that just kind of killed booksellers. So don't think that doesn't exist, but a lot of these like product restriction things, these are going to be a much bigger effect if you're looking at selling things other than books. For the most part, with the product restrictions, the number one thing I can tell you is that if you are a new seller, you are going to have to do this pre-approval for every book, which I get it. It seems stupid, but it's really not that big of a deal once you figure out how to do it. And once you do it. I mean, it sucks, but after 3 months of doing it, you probably could stop doing it because the amount of restricted books that you're probably going to have are going to be very minimal. Beyond that part of the product restrictions are not that huge of a deal, but it is important for you as a seller to realize that some of your items are going to get restricted, and sometimes most of the scanning apps nowadays will do an okay job of telling you if you're restricted in it. Even still, you might get items home and they might just change because it seems like this stuff is changing on a day-to-day basis. So just keep that in mind, because what the biggest thing I see with product restrictions is people get really frustrated with them because they just, you spend the whole day outsourcing books, finding books, and then you get home and like one of the books is restricted. It's like, come on, I spent all that work and now I can't even sell this book because of some stupid product restriction, which is, I understand, but it's a completely psychological thing. And this is a huge part of the reason why I am so avid about don't become obsessed with these things, because all they're going to do is going to be another tick in your box to make you not want to go out and source books, make you not want to grow this business. The fewer of those you can have, the more successful you're going to be as a bookseller. And sometimes just ignoring a problem that exists and just living with it and realizing that's part of doing your business is way more effective than sitting there and being obsessed with putting all your time into figuring out the ultimate solution to this problem, which from my perspective, I'm going to tell you there isn't an ultimate solution to this problem, because as soon as you figure out that solution, Amazon's going to change something with that algorithm and it's going to screw it all up. It goes back to like we talked about back in the Buy Box episode. These product restrictions are happening through an algorithm, and nobody except the people at Amazon who wrote that algorithm have any idea what that algorithm is doing. My hunch would be that the people that wrote the algorithm aren't even really sure what it's doing. So you just kind of have to take that with a grain of salt and shake it off and realize that this is just part of your business of selling on Amazon, and accept it. Come up with a process. I'm not telling anybody to ignore these things like I do, just eat every book that's restricted, but draw a line in the sand that, at a certain point, you are not going to, come up with that system that it's okay. I apply, see if I can get auto approved. If I can't get auto approved, then the book goes on eBay. Have a very streamlined system where there's a start and an end, so you're not getting wrapped up in dwelled in, I have to figure out a way to be able to get this book on Amazon. So, hopefully that was helpful. Basically what I wanted to do was just make you familiar with what product restrictions are, and particularly how they're going to affect you as a bookseller. And we may revisit this with more details about maybe how do you go about getting approved and things like that in a later podcast episode, or probably more than likely you're going to see some sort of training released that I'll come out with for that, because that's a little hard to do through a podcast format. But keep an eye on that. We'll let you know when that stuff starts becoming available. The other thing I can tell you is that I have not personally tested this, but there is a software out there called GoToLister right now. It's a listing software, and it's designed for Amazon booksellers. And when I talked about how when you initially set up your account, you have to get approval for every book. Well, GoToLister, from my understanding, has a very streamlined way to do that for you, and it's the only listing software I know of that is touting this ability. So if you are getting started in Amazon selling and your account is brand new, that might be the listing software to at least look at initially, because it probably will make that approval process way easier. And that's going to be a huge advantage to you. You can always, if there's other things about GoToLister that you don't like, you can maybe just suffer through it for the first few months and then cancel it once you're not needing so many approvals. Go over to your other listing software. So with that, I think we'll wrap this episode up. I hope everybody found this info helpful, and please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is sales@kingsragemedia.com with anything kind of questions you have. We also do have services available for Amazon sellers, actually I should say 100% Amazon booksellers, and those services are multiple levels of sourcing services. We have lead lists that help you source books off of eBay to sell on Amazon. We also have relationships with our own suppliers you can get books from us, as well as we offer a 100% support on your Amazon business. So basically, for a very low yearly subscription fee, you can just submit tickets to us with any kind of questions you have related to your Amazon business, and we'll do the best to help you get the issue resolved, get you going on your bookstore. Perfect thing for any new Amazon booksellers starting out. So you can find more information about those services in our show notes, or you can just jump over to kingsragemedia.com and check them out there. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Prime Bookseller Podcast. Join us for the next episode as we discuss all things Amazon bookselling.